Welcome to Table Talk, the place for deep conversations in the Geekverse. And trust me, when we tear into a subject, we go deep. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. Each episode, I'll be talking with one or more creators, authors, illustrators, publishers, or other movers and shakers in games, TV, books, movies, or other areas of the Geekverse. Regular guests include Douglas A. Burton, the author of Faraway Bird, a multi-award-winning historical fiction novel of the Byzantine Empress Theodora. He's also the author of The Heroine's Labyrinth, an alternative story structure to the hero's journey that often occurs in stories with feminine heroes. That structural framework frequently comes up in our analysis of story. Brianna De Silva, she's the director and co-writer of The Cultists, a Lovecraftian comedy mockumentary-style web show here on YouTube, and the author of The City of Reckoning, an epic fantasy novel of political intrigue, the ethics of war, and young love. Cameron Pasha is a screenwriter, director, novelist, and was a writer and producer on the series Kings, a producer on NBC's Bionic Woman, and a co-producer and writer for Sleeper Cell. He's also written for the CW series Nikita and Roswell, New Mexico. He's been breaking news from inside Lucasfilm, Disney, and Hollywood. His analysis and commentary have become very popular on YouTube. We regularly meet to discuss and analyze stories, and when we do, we dive into graduate-level seminars on story structure and writing. Come on in and let's go deep. And when I say we're going deep, I mean you'd better bring your hard suit. Other guests have included Lou Anders, the author of the Thrones and Bones fantasy novels Once Upon a Unicorn, the creator and publisher of the Norengard RPG, and the author of Star Wars: A Pirate's Price, the book that explains why the Millennium Falcon is on the planet Batu at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Mark Tassin, the creator of the World of Ataltis, head of Mechanical Muse, former director of the Gen Con Writers Symposium, and the head developer of the new Cool Name RPG. Let's see, who else?
Bond. James Bond.
Well, not James Bond. Not yet. Maybe soon, though. But I have interviewed Jamie Stegmaier, the founder of Stonemaier Games, crowdfunder extraordinaire, and publisher of many hit board games like Scythe and Wingspan. Brian Colin, sculptor of the world of Revelo Monster Busts, and the creator of the vast grim dark horror RPG. Ajit George, the Dungeons & Dragons author. We talked about game writing, education, and his contribution to Van Richter's Guide to Ravenloft and the development of the Journeys to the Radiant Citadel.
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, the commander of the legions of Asgard, the rightful heir to the throne, and the goddess of death.
Well, actually, that interview got rather spicy, so I think I'd better just keep that one to myself. Kate Wilson, a YouTuber, actress, host, and prolific geek guru who's now working to make a new show dedicated to the world of tabletop gaming a reality. So buckle up and get ready for a wild ride, because it's time to explore the worlds of tabletop gaming, sci-fi, fantasy, and all of geekdom through the eyes of those who are making things happen.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger. Ready to move out.
It's time for Table Talk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my home. Welcome to the office. Welcome to Table Talk. It is so good to see everyone. Thank you so much for hanging with us. We're having technical problems today. I've never seen anything like that before. StreamYard was telling me that demand and traffic is high, and so it actually wasn't letting me go live. And I was like, I'm going to wait just a couple more minutes and see if it works. And then it finally did. So right now it works. So thank you so much for hanging with us and standing by for the technical issues. Tonight we have one of the most popular guests that we have had on Table Talk ever back with us tonight. There was an absolutely fantastic and highly watched conversation when last he was here. You know him, you love him. Vic Mignogna is back. Thank you so much for being here, Vic.
Well, man, after watching that intro and seeing all of the other amazing guests you had, I'm kind of feeling like, wow, I got to measure up to some big time, got to fill some big shoes here. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to validate my nerd credibility right now. You ready?
Okay.
I noticed that the description of each of those people that you had on the show in the opening was done in the Star Trek original series font. The letter style. Yeah.
Yes.
Big nerd.
You are exactly right. I put both. I put the original series font and the Next Generation font On this channel in general. I use both of them. So you're right.
I love
The
it.
original series was on the intro. Yes.
I love it. Yeah, their names were in a certain font, but then their description of what they did was in the Star Trek TOS font. Thank you for having me. Let's get back on track here.
let's
I'm so
get
glad to be joining you again, Heath. Thank you.
We had a fantastic conversation last time where we talked a lot about. It was basically a lot of overview, high level stuff about Star Trek and Star Trek continues, mainly in the production. We were looking at the sets and things like that. And there was a whole lot of things that we could get into much deeper. And so I thought that we would do that today. And there are also, I think, some broader philosophical issues that we can talk about.
Oh, we love talking philosophy. We love going deep.
We go deep. We go deep. You know, I said that we did 18 hours on Star Trek 6. We on this channel, Doug and I did an 18-hour long analysis of Star Trek 6.
Goodness.
We went for 5.5 hours one day, and we realized, okay, we've got to stop the. I got to stop the stream. We've been streaming for 5.5 hours, and we were only like 23 minutes in the movie, or something like that, or 43 or something.
So like basically, you spent as much time talking about the movie as they took making the movie.
As they took making it, yes, yeah, we did. That was the longest one, but we did an analysis of every Star Trek movie that like that, hours long. So yes, we can go into any kind of depth you want on any of these topics.
Well, I'm ready when you are, Heath. Take us there, bro.
All right,
take us there.
Let's go. So this is one thing. The first thing I wanted to start with was one of the things that we talked about last time, which or it started with, and I wanted to kind of correct and things like that, or because I had talked about Star Trek Continues, or I'd mentioned Star Trek Continues, showing what people who really care can do. And you had talked about, well, when you're talking about fan films, you took the conversation in the direction of fan films, and how there are a lot of people who care a lot about Star Trek, and that's why they do fan films. But that one of the reasons Star Trek Continues is so successful is because you also had the technical know-how in order to actually produce the show. But actually, when I was talking about, okay, it seems like we've got when people really care here, I wasn't talking about so much about the fans. I was talking about the major studios who do have all of the technical capability to produce really amazing things. And over the last some number of years, I mean, one of the critiques that a lot of people will have over a lot of the different major franchises, Star Trek being one, is that why can't we get great Star Wars, great Star Trek, great all of these things, when you would think a major studio would have such fantastic, already has such fantastical technical know-how. What do you think, and do you agree? What do you think about the state of fandom?
I'm going to tell you, I have a thought on that, actually.
Okay.
Listening to you talk about it, it occurs to me that story is much more important than technical. Nobody really ever questions or has critical things to say about the technical expertise involved in any major motion picture, like these films that have huge budgets and almost limitless capabilities, and nobody ever has a problem with their technical prowess. But if the story is not there, if the characters are not compelling, then it really doesn't matter how much money you spend on the special effects. And we've heard this conversation 100 times, Heath. People go see movies and they come home, and what do they say? Well, the special effects were great, and there was a lot of spectacle, and there were a lot of explosions and all kinds of great optical effects and CGI, but the story was kind of lame. The story was kind of shallow. And conversely, if you found an amazing, compelling, thought-provoking story on the internet, you'd probably watch it regardless of how big the budget might have been or how much technical prowess they displayed, because stories are compelling. People have always loved a good story from the dawn of time. Telling a compelling, thought-provoking story, especially if it's something that you can glean some life truths from, or if it's something that that hits you in the heart and makes you want to make adjustments to the way you live or the way you treat other people. That's much more valuable to me, and I think to a lot of people, than the prowess. And some of the greatest movies of all time are ones that got both of them right. You know what I mean? The
Right.
ones that amazing story, but then they had a great technical expertise to back up the story.
Right. And if you can hit all of it, the great technical expertise, the story, maybe often like when we're talking about something like Terminator or the original Star Wars or things like that, they also push the envelope. Not only did they get it technically right, but they also like push the envelope with some type of
Yes.
technology, which the movie did not depend on because the story had to be good, because we're talking about the major breakout things that we always think of, but also pushing
Right.
something ahead like that. But
Right. And when we talk about Star Trek, when we talk about the original series of Star Trek, nobody praises Star Trek for its special effects. I mean, granted, in the mid to late 60s, they were groundbreaking in their own way. Now, compared to what we're used to nowadays, they're kind of cheesy. But that's not what Star Trek was about. It was about the human condition. It was about humanity putting aside its petty differences and uniting and reaching out into the galaxy, united in peace, to make contact with other species and other worlds. And that's the compelling part of Star Trek. If Star Trek loses that, it fails to be Star Trek. It could be any other nameless, generic sci-fi show with spaceships and phasers and, and aliens. But that's not what Star Trek was about. And anybody that knows it, the series knows that.
Well, you may not want to answer this, but like we're talking about modern day Star Trek is a good example. Like, how do you feel about modern day Star Trek?
You know what? I thought about this, and of course you're right. I've been asked this a lot.
Oh, you have? Oh,
oh my goodness. And I can't help but feel like some people are trying to trap you,
No,
They're
I
like,
don't want to trap you.
What do you think of the new Star Trek? Here, speak into the microphone. You know what I mean? But here's what I have to say about it. I am very much, Heath, I'm a very, very much a live and let live kind of a person. Unlike a lot of the things going on in our world right now, you and I could wholeheartedly disagree on something, and we'll still go to dinner, and we'll still be buddies, and our friendship will not be in jeopardy because you and I don't agree on certain things. And I'm old enough to remember a time when that was pretty much the norm. But nowadays, people, what do you think of it? And I'm not going to poo-poo on it. I'm not going to speak disparagingly of it, but here's what I will say. The people that are making the new Star Trek series today are not making it for me. They're not making it for the 55, 65, 70, 75-year-old classic lifelong Star Trek fans. They're making it for a new generation. They're making it to appeal to younger viewers. And I get that. So I don't hold that against them. You know what I mean? I'm not their target audience. And I understand that. And you know what? A lot of people love a lot of the new Star Trek. What I've seen, I have enjoyed. Now, to be fair, nothing is going to touch my lifelong love of the original series, because it was an inspiration to me in so many ways, in so many areas of my life. But everybody feels that way about whatever Star Trek they discovered, Like, I don't know if we talked about this last time, but for me and people my age, and even some younger people, the original series was their jam. That was their Star Trek. However, people that are a generation behind me, Star Trek Next Generation was their Star Trek. Captain Picard was their captain. Maybe it was Discovery. Maybe it was Voyager. Maybe it was Deep Space Nine. Maybe it's Strange New Worlds. And you know what? I'm going to repeat it. Live and let live. Allow people to love what they love. Allow people to enjoy what they enjoy, and leave them alone. If they don't necessarily like what you like, that's fine. There's room enough to have grace for anybody and their own particular preferences.
Okay, I agree with that. I agree with that. Uh, what is your relationship with the original series movies? You talk about the original. I mean, the original, crew movies.
You know what? I'll never forget. I waited with bated breath and chewed my fingernails to the bone, waiting for Star Trek: The Motion Picture to come out. I was so excited that there was a movie coming out. And of course, when you get to see the Enterprise on the big screen in a theater for the first time, it was heart-pounding excitement. Back then, when the movie came out, it was underwhelming to a lot of fans. I think because it was a bit more cerebral, it was a bit slower paced, because they had the time, like when the Enterprise was flying through V'ger, that sequence must have lasted, I don't even know, 15 minutes.
A long time.
And I mean, I remember sitting in the theater. Now I can close my eyes and I can see myself sitting in the movie theater going, okay, we get it. It's a big, giant alien vessel. Okay, let's move the story along. Because we still had ingrained in us the original series and the pacing of the original series. But you know what? That movie has held up very well. I've watched it a few times since then, and a lot of classic Star Trek fans, often you'll find them online in different forums and on different threads, talking about how when they saw the Star Trek: The Motion Picture in the theaters, they were kind of like, okay, it's all right. But now they love it, and it really holds up. And I think it's a difference in the era we live in. And of course, most people agree that Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, was probably the best of the original series movies. The Whales, Voyage Home, Star Trek IV was a great film.
I am a huge fan of Star Trek VI. I'm a huge fan of Star Trek VI.
Well, there you go. And you know what? You just made my point. You just illustrated what I was about to say. Most fans like to say the even-numbered movies were the best ones. For whatever reason, 2, 4, 6, you know what I mean? It's like they were the good ones. And that doesn't make really any logical sense, but that's just the way it fleshed out. I think personally they could have done movies with the Wrath of Khan formula for many, many years to come. That formula being, take an original series episode that was left open-ended, and let's follow up on what are the ramifications of what they did in the original episode. What's the follow-up? Where are they now? What are the results of the decisions that Captain Kirk made in that particular episode, or what Spock did in this particular episode, or whatever, which is what they did with The Wrath of Khan. They took an original series episode called Space Seed, and they played it out 10 years later, or whatever it was. And I think they could have used that formula for many, many years to come and had a lot of successful films. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a fan.
Well, but also talking about the relationship with storytelling, I've heard it said that what are people expecting out of Star Trek? Okay, it could be like a new Star Trek movie. Okay, well, it could be a gigantic, big budget, movie with all kinds of phaser fire and warfare and all of that. But that Star Trek could potentially also be geared to very effective, like mid-budget movies.
Well, yeah, the original series. The original series had a small budget. And look what they did. They changed the face of television. They changed the face of science fiction. Here we are 60 years later with 2 or 3 new Star Trek television shows Star Trek conventions, Star Trek cruises, Star Trek novels, Star Trek everything. It wasn't because of the big budget of the original series. It was because they made something magical with what they had. You know what? People don't, if you really know Star Trek, the first thought in your mind is not phasers. The first thought in your mind is not battles and Klingons. The first thought is the stories and the characters. And you don't need huge budgets to make great stories. The original series proved that. In fact, I don't know if you know this or not, but the reason the original series was canceled wasn't because it wasn't popular. It was because the network didn't want to make it. It cost too much money. It was the most expensive show on television at the time. And even then, they couldn't keep the show under budget because there were so many demands to making a sci-fi show like that. And the new creatures and the new worlds and the new things that had to be developed every week for a new episode. And toward the end of the series, the studio kept cutting their budget because they wanted to kill the show. They would put it in bad time slots that nobody was watching, so they could justify it by going, oh, we see nobody's watching. Look how bad the numbers are. Well, yeah, the numbers are bad. You put it on at 3 a.m. on Thursday night. Nobody's watching. But they cut the budget as well. And even still, go look at some of those third season episodes where the budget was so low. Some of them, they just reused things that they'd already built. Some of them, they didn't even use sets. There was one in particular called The Empath. 80% of the episode was Kirk, Spock, and McCoy in a black, completely black environment with just little spotlights that they would act within. And yet the story was so beautiful and so compelling that it didn't matter that they didn't have a ton of money to spend on sets and effects. And therein is a perfect example of the magic of a good story.
Okay. Then let's talk about that, because you're someone who's dedicated his life to storytelling. I mean, this has been your career, that you've been part of storytelling. And of course, to certain people, it's very easy to be dismissive of entertainment industries, or that it's just a movie, it's just a TV show, or things like that. But let's talk about when those things are at their best and what they mean to people and why. So if we're storytellers, any part of that, all of that around storytelling, whether it's an actor or whatever, the cinematographers and all of that. But if you're at your best when it comes to storytelling, what are you doing?
Well, the best stories are ones that connect with the audience. Very simply, right? The best stories are the ones that an audience member or a viewer can connect with. They can relate to. Something about it resonates with them. It taps into their heartstrings. Maybe it taps into a loss they've had. Maybe it taps into a challenge that they're currently walking through. And so the best stories are the ones that a viewer connects with. They can see themselves in it. They feel something familiar with it. And maybe it helps them. I mean, I'm going to make a quick little detour here from Star Trek to anime. I've been voice acting in anime for over 20 years. I've done over 400 different series, and I've had the privilege to be a part of some very powerful stories. And even now, years after I recorded those shows, I get fan letters from fans that say, this show that you did 15 years ago changed my life. It meant the world to me. I identified with it. I was going through a loss. My parents had just divorced. It brought my brother and I closer together. My mom had a horrible illness, and our family was struggling. And this show or this character or this story got me through it. And I've adopted a lot of the concepts and the lessons and the encouraging ideas that I learned from that show or that show. You can't put a price tag on that. You know, Heath, you can't put a price tag on that. And that's what we're talking about. Stories that just have magic qualities that the viewers can relate to.
And, we talk about what kind of influence is on a person, and particularly a child. I don't think it's right to be dismissive of these things because you are ingesting them, and so, once somebody, I think that things like Star Trek and Star Wars and the Lord of the Rings, there were no movies when I was a kid. So the written word, I think those things were positive impacts in my life. And so I think that, like, if I were to have children, yes, the kinds of stories that they consume is important. Is this high quality media? Is this low quality media? Yes, you
Yeah.
can say, well, this is just fun.
And when you do have kids, if and when you do have kids, you know what you're going to do? I will predict it right here and now, and I'm quite sure I'm right. You're going to sit them down and go, here, watch this. You're going to love this. Your dad loved this when he was your age, and I think you're going to love it too. And you're going to share things with them that meant something to you. So now that show that you loved or that movie that you loved that you took so much away from is timeless. Now it's fresh and new to a new generation. And that's how these stories endure. I remember seeing a t-shirt once that said, everything I know, I learned from Star Trek.
Yeah, I've seen, yes.
Now that's a funny thought, but it's not that far off the truth. There are people that watched that show when they were kids. And you know what they learned? They learned concepts of integrity, bravery, kindness, self-sacrifice. So many things that were played out in a lot of those episodes. And when you watch them as a little kid, like I said, like you said, and you're just sitting there like this, and you're so enraptured in this story, you're so caught up in it, and you ingest it, and it becomes part of who you are. And then you go to school and you talk about it, and you start treating other people the way that Kirk treats Spock, or you know what I mean, or the friendships or things that you learn from these shows, and they become part of our lives. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. I mean, like I mentioned in our last time when we chatted, when I started Star Trek Continues, my goal from the very, very beginning, and you can ask anybody that was part of my series from the beginning, I told everybody, if we're going to do this, we are going to find compelling, classic Star Trek stories. We're not just going to put on uniforms and fire phasers and fight Klingons and beam up and beam down. We're going to mine some really good stories, and it won't be easy. There are tons of mediocre stories, and even more not good stories at all. But when you set the bar to this kind of story, it's not as easy to find. But we had a lot of great writers and people that wrote some great stories for Star Trek Continues. I'm very proud of that.
So what stories that you wrote for Star Trek Continues, or produced and wrote, are the most meaningful to you, and why? What are the ones that are?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think, first of all, episode 4, The White Iris, was a very powerful episode. The thrust of the episode was that Captain Kirk, while being a confident, capable, self-assured leader, deep down inside, he has his own shame, his own regrets, his own heartbreak. And because he's a leader, he shoved it down because he didn't want it to affect his ability to command or his ability to have the admiration and loyalty and confidence of his crew. But our 4th episode explored what happens when all of those things that Captain Kirk has shoved down deep inside and put a lid on for years come flooding to the surface. Now, that is a story theme that most everyone, to varying degrees, can relate to. Our very first episode, Pilgrim of Eternity, the theme of the story, which I wrote, was that of self-sacrifice. Not necessarily me first and, you know, what I want and to blaze us with everyone and everything else. But the idea was the idea of self-sacrifice as an actual form of life energy, that you actually gain life energy and life force by being self-sacrificing for others, which again is a very lofty, noble concept. You know, most people in the world just look out for number one, right? They're looking out for themselves, and they're making decisions that benefit them and them and them. And our first episode was about the Greek god Apollo, who in the original series, he first appeared in an original series episode called Who Mourns for Adonais? And he literally gained power by people worshiping him. What we explored in our first episode was that maybe there's another way to gain energy and life force. And it's not by forcing people to bow down to you, but it's by giving of yourself to helping others. Self-sacrifice as life energy. And it was a beautiful story. We had a lot of those that were very powerful stories, very classic TOS type stories.
Let's talk about the influence and impact of religion on storytelling. You know, there are several different ways that we can go with that, that I think all could potentially be very important. But you've been very open on very different streams and also your own social media about the importance of religion and Christianity in your life.
Yes.
Did that come out in Star Trek Continues?
Yes. But maybe not in the way you think. Let me qualify that. First of all, I have never been a big fan of the word religion. I think that word has been so twisted, and so many atrocities have been committed in the name of religion. Things that God would never approve of. But people take that and they use it like a weapon. You know, there are plenty of precedents, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. There are plenty of precedents throughout history of people taking a religious belief or a particular faith or doctrine and using it to wield power and influence, and in many cases line their pockets, all in the name of, we can bring you closer to God, we've got the answer, we know the truth, and if you do what we say and follow what we tell you, or send us money or any number of things. Religion has been very twisted. So I don't even like to use the word religion. A lot of people write me and they say, I understand you're very religious. And I will write them back and say, no, not really. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. I believe the Bible is God's word. I believe that God loved us enough to send his son to pay a price to realign us. We'll make this an educational interview here, Heath. You know, the word religion, the source of the word religion, you know what it means?
I do not.
Its original source is realign. You can even hear it in the word. Religion was intended, its original source language means to realign. In other words, realign us with our Creator. So I don't use the word religion. My faith is very important to me, and I do my best to practice it as best I can. I stumble and fall like everybody else does, and fortunately, God knows me better than I know myself, so he helps me get back up and keep moving forward. And it is my greatest desire to encourage others to do the same. Now, in answer to your question, Did religion, or let's call it like faith-based values, those kind of things, did they show up in Star Trek Continues? Yes, they did. But you know what? They also showed up in Star Trek. They also showed up in Lord of the Rings. They also showed up in Star Wars. And here's what I mean by that. I believe, I want to say that again. I believe, I'm not pushing my beliefs on anybody else. I'm simply sharing what I believe. I believe that the very core, the very foundation of morality is in God. God created human beings. I don't know if you've ever read C.S. Lewis, but C.S. Lewis was an atheist who set out to disprove Christianity and ended up becoming a great Christian author, an apologist. And he's written several books on the subject. And he talks about how morality and concepts of right and wrong are not just cultural. They are inherent in our makeup. People know when they're hurting others or behaving badly or immorally or without integrity or without honor. So I would submit that any story that has strong concepts of morality, justice, right and wrong, if you take them back to their origin, have their origin in humans being spiritual beings with at least a portion of the Spirit of God in us. We were born with it. It's genetic. It's in our DNA. You don't have to teach a little kid to lie, do you? Do you need to teach children how to lie? No. Do you need to teach them how to steal things that don't belong to them, take things from other kids that they want? No, it's inherent. And in the same way, I believe that concepts of morality and right and justice and honor and grace and mercy and forgiveness, these are all qualities that have their love. I believe all of these have their origin in God, and God instilled it in all human beings. Now, we can either build up those qualities and seek to be people of good moral character and integrity and honesty, or we can be self-serving, right? We can be selfish and greedy and arrogant. Both of those qualities are within all of us. It just kind of depends. It kind of depends on each person and which dog they choose to feed, so to speak. I don't know if you've ever heard that one before, but which dog wins in a fight? The one you feed. The one who's strong and well fed and ready to fight. So that's my feeling about religion and how it plays into. I think that one of the reasons that the original series was so well embraced was because, it discussed social issues, didn't it? Moral issues and social issues. And in my mind, the idea that you and I could look at anything and go, that's not right. That's not right. Or that's hurtful, or that's painful, or that's wrong, or that's damaging. That's because we have ingrained in us instinctively a sense of right and wrong, which I believe as a Christian originates with our Heavenly Father.
Well, so yes, so I like that explanation of the influence on story, because you can say, okay, what was the series of books that was so popular that was about the rapture when I was in my
Oh,
high
Left
school.
Behind.
I Left Behind or something. Okay, you know, I don't know. I don't think I read. I may have read a little bit of those stories, but okay, obvious, you know, stories with obvious Christian messaging. I guess that's what I would say. That, like, you know, okay,
Sure.
here's the category of stories that are obvious Christian messaging, but you're going to a deeper and more fundamental level. That the story doesn't have to mention those things or be about Christian messaging. You're talking about something much more fundamental.
Absolutely. I mean, pick a well-loved popular movie. E.T. Let's pick E.T. Okay.
Okay.
There are so many elements in that movie that symbolize spiritual things. So E.T. comes to Earth alone, right? And he is befriends this little boy, and the little boy protects him, wants to help him get home. He thinks he's dead, right? Remember? He thinks he's dead, and little Henry is standing over that canister that they've got him locked in, frozen in, and he's talking, and he says, this is a quote. He says, "I'll believe in you my whole life." Believe in you. What does that mean? He's an alien from outer space. Isn't that exactly the kind of thing that a Christian says about Jesus? I will believe in you my whole life. And then what happens? E.T. comes back from the dead. He rises from the dead. And do you remember when the back of the ambulance that they stole, they threw E.T. in the back and stole him? They were going to try to get him back to his spaceship. And when the thing stopped and all the other kids on the bikes were at the back of the ambulance and the doors open, and E.T. was standing there in white towels draped over him like this, with smoke billowing around him. And then when he's getting ready to leave, he goes up to Elliot and he touches him in the heart and he says, "I'll be right here." How many times do you hear people talk about inviting Jesus into their heart?
Mm.
And then he ascends back into heaven in a star-shaped spaceship. The love and the sacrifice that Elliot, the little boy, goes through to help his friend. That's uplifting. It's beautiful and it's powerful, and it makes you cry and it resonates with your heart because it taps into something that's inside all of us. Those concepts of, like I said, friendship, self-sacrifice, love, grace, mercy, forgiveness, those are all godly qualities, godly characteristics. Now, I'm not saying somebody has to be a believer to be, forgiving or to be self-sacrificing. My point is that I believe they all have their origin in the part of us that contains God's spirit, because God is all of those things. You wanted to go deep, bro.
Yes. And I was trying to say where to go from that. And I think here is a direction that we could go from that, because I want to address, also thank everybody who's here in the chat. I mean, you have so many people who, like I said, your first interview here on this channel was one of the most watched interviews out there. You've got so many people here. Thank you so much to everybody who was in the chat. And I would love to.
Yeah, I can't see the chat, but thank you guys.
Oh, you can't see the chat?
Well, no, I can't. Where do I see? Oh, wait.
If you click on comments,
do I change over here to comments?
Yes.
Oh,
so
there
that's everybody rolling by. There everybody is. Yes.
Okay,
We've had
I just
all
had it
kinds
on
of people on.
It defaulted on private chat, so I didn't see any of these.
Oh yeah, the public chat has got tons of people in this, and lots of people are talking and saying
Oh
things.
my goodness. Can I take just 1 minute to thank these people?
Yes, yes, yes. I'll be happy to call out anyone you'd like.
Lydia and her husband James, I believe, Pickles and Chips, Anon, Joanna, Dan, Romer. I'm so grateful that you're joining us. Thank you. Well, hello to Brownsville. Thank you so much. Toyman, Norma, Lil Rocks, Hardy Girl, James Bacon, Sable. It's such a privilege and an honor to have you guys here. Thank you. Ex Starlina, hello.
Hello, everyone. Sable Phoenix actually asked for $5. Did you consciously try to address any of these themes in Star Trek Continues?
Yes.
Yes, you did.
You know
and
why?
If so, what episode specifically?
Well, the reason I did
Yeah.
consciously did is because I think it's right, because I think it's important, because I think that one of the things that resonated the most about the original series were those concepts of more good moral choices and integrity and dependability and friendship and thoughtfulness and sacrifice and all of those kind of things, bravery in the face of danger and fear. The things that resonated with me so much about the original series, I wanted to incorporate those in Star Trek Continues. There was I'll give you a perfect example. Let's see, what episode was that? 1 second. Oh, it was in episode 4. There was a scene when where Spock and McCoy are talking about what's wrong with Captain Kirk. He's been seeing ghosts. Nobody else can see him. But Captain Kirk is becoming increasingly agitated and off of his game because of it. So Spock and McCoy are having a private chat about it. And McCoy says to Spock, oh, come on. You don't really think the captain is seeing ghosts. I thought you were a man of science. And Spock says, to be a man of science means to acknowledge that sometimes there is more than science can explain. To be a man of science is to acknowledge that sometimes things go beyond science's ability to explain or understand. And I added that line specifically because I think there is so much more to life, to relationships, to why we're even here than science, than any practical experiments and research can ever uncover. I think there's a lot more that we don't see than what we do. And so I added that line specifically for that reason. There were a lot of those. We actually, I'll let you in on a little secret too. We had a lot of people in our production that were believers, that were Christians. Now, I want you to know that was never brought up in any conversation before I hired them. Before I asked them to come on to the show, I never said, well, tell me where you stand religion. No, that was never a conversation. If they could run a camera really well, I wanted them. If they were good with lighting and loved Star Trek, I wanted them. If they were good with sound, audio, and loved Star Trek, I wanted them. Where they fell on the faith spectrum was never even addressed. But after all these people came together, lo and behold, there were a very large number of them that were believers. And I think it came through in a lot of the way that we approached a lot of the subjects in our series.
Going off of everyone here in the chat, and you said that I ask you a question that you're asked a lot, and I'm like, I got to ask you questions that people do not ask. So you put me on the spot by saying that but so because there's so much love for you in the chat. And like I said, I appreciate everyone who's coming out here and
No,
watching
not as
this.
much as I do,
Watch
Heath.
on
Not as much as I
and
do.
watch on replay and all of that. It was shocking to me, like to see the comments, like from the last episode, the comments and the live stream, and then the comments that people left on the video, you know, after who had watched on replay. I'd never seen anything like that before. I mean, you have such a tremendous following of people who love you, love what you do, and who have clearly think you have, or you clearly have had such a huge impact on people's life. And I was talking to with somebody else. I was like, I've never seen anything like this. That you've got this famous guy, you know, who is, you know, living the star life, right? And does all of these kinds of things. And yet it's also such a wonderful connection with so many people. And I realized this question could be like, Vic, tell me why you're so amazing. Why is it like being so amazing? But I don't mean it that way. I'm like, but like, I don't see this in other people. So
well, let me
why?
counterbalance. Let me counterbalance, Heath, and tell you that there are people out there that hate me with a fiery passion. And the sad thing is they don't really know me that well, but I've learned over my lifetime, for whatever reason, I'm a pretty polarizing individual. And I don't know why that is, but I think anybody, you, Heath, you, anyone in this chat, anybody that decides to step out and create something, or step out and share their heart's passion about something, or seeks to have a positive influence or encouragement in other people's lives, they become very polarizing. You either really like and appreciate them for who they are and who they want to be, or you just can't stand them because of who they are or who they want to be. So, you know, I really am humbled and I'm honored by what you said. And I'm very, very grateful to all of these people in this in the chat right now, and those that they're going to watch it later. But the moment you endeavor to speak publicly about things that could be controversial, let's put it that way, that have differences of opinion, you're going to have some people that just can't stand you, and some people that really appreciate that you did that. It's a two-way street always.
I'm going to ask you about success here in just a moment, how you get things done. But Dan for $5. Thank you very much, Dan. Dan says, Vic, this is out of left field, but I'm watching Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda starring Kevin Sorbo for the first time. You watched it. Thanks.
You know what, Dan? I don't believe I have watched Andromeda, but I'm good buddies with Kevin Sorbo. I like Kevin a lot. Kevin, also a fellow believer in Christ, to carry on a theme there. But I have not watched it, Dan. You'll have to let me know if you like it. Is it good? I'll watch. We'll watch the chat here and see what you say if you're enjoying it.
I have not seen it. I'll have to check it out. I see people talking about it. Sable's talking about it. But we got. Yeah, I know you said you had about an hour, and we got started late, but we got about maybe 8 minutes left. With
Sure,
I've got a question for you though. So last time you also talked about having great respect for people who actually do things, and I'm also in that category. I like doing things, and that's been a theme of this show and this channel that I've tried to do. Like, this channel is not one that's just a critic channel. Like, let's all watch a TV show and talk about how much we hate it, or whatever. That's not what we do here. I talk to a lot of people who are engaged in actually making things, whether that's books or games or whatever it is.
Yeah.
What do you tell someone who actually wants to do things and not just talk about it? Because it's not easy to do things.
Oh no!
Like, if you're looking for success in actually doing things, right? So what do you tell somebody?
I mean, any of us, all of us, could sit around somebody's living room, having a drink, having a beer or having a Coke, and talk about all these great ideas we have. Or we're just sitting there on a couch talking. That doesn't require much effort, does it? It's a whole different level when you decide to actually execute something. Like, for instance, we could talk about, well, let's take you, for instance, Heath. You could say, hey, I want to start a podcast. Okay, well, that took all of 3 seconds, right? You didn't have to do anything. To say that cost you nothing, took no amount of time or preparation. But when you decided you really wanted to see that to fruition, what did you have to do? Well, you need to get the equipment you need. You need to learn how to use that equipment. You need to start scheduling guests and decide, what are you going to talk about? What's going to make your podcast different from others? How are you going to engage your audience? How are you going to promote your podcast? What are you going to call it? Are you going to have any graphics to open it? Who's going to do those? What are they going to look like? I mean, do you see how it just starts expanding and expanding? And there are millions of little decisions that you have to make in order to turn that little phrase, I think I want to do a podcast, to actually doing a podcast. And the same thing with Star Trek Continues. People sit around all the time and go, man, I'd love to be in a Star Trek fan film. Okay, what are you going to do to accomplish that? You know, it's easy to say, but when you start thinking it through, you're like, oh my goodness, so many moving parts, so much scheduling, so much creative sweat, you know, and work put in. Who's going to make costumes? Who's going to build sets? Where are you going to build sets? Who's going to pay for those sets to be built? Who's going to write the story? Who's going to turn the script? Who's going to cast everybody? And are they going to be available? And can you find the right people? And who's going to run sound? Do they have any equipment? How much equipment do they have? You know what I mean? Like it doesn't end. It just keeps growing. But once you commit to doing it, if you actually see it through, there is no other gratification in the world like that. There is no other sense of satisfaction than to say, I'm going to write a song, and you actually write one and record it. Or I'm going to start a podcast, or I'm going to write a book, or I'm going to draw a picture. I mean, it's on all different levels. It takes much more effort and focus and discipline. Discipline. It takes a lot more to actually do those things than it does to just talk about them. Anybody can talk. You know, we see politicians on television all the time making speeches. Well, they can just flush that speech down the toilet. You know why? Because it's just a bunch of words. Anybody can stand in front of a microphone and say words. But what are they doing? What are they actually doing? That's where the rubber meets the road. So in my mind, talk is cheap. For lack of, I'll borrow that old saying, talk is cheap. But if you ever actually decide to focus your talents and your energies to actually create something, that's a whole different level, and you'll find a great deal of satisfaction doing it. Hi, Anon.
Excellent.
Hi, Dennis. Hi, Norma.
Yeah, and actually, this is yes. Everybody is coming in. Sable says Vic has been such a great guest both times you have. You know, and Vic,
Thank
you
you,
are welcome
Sable.
back anytime. If there's something that's
We'll
going
do it
on,
again
that you
sometime.
want to talk about,
We'll do it
like
again
that,
sometime.
you're welcome to come back. But
Thank
let's see.
you.
This will be a good way to, I believe, kind of close us out, because X Hunter has sent in a $4.99 super chat. Says, "Hi Vic, I hope you are having a wonderful day. Thank you for doing daily victories. They help me get the day. And I always learn something new. God bless." Thank you very much, Hunter.
That means the world to me. Thank you, X Hunter.
Do you want to talk about what those daily victories are? Because that's on your social media, right? I'll bring that and give you a link.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity to do that.
Those are on TikTok, right?
They're on,
I mean, there are other too,
they're on all my social media. And if you can see them, the vast majority of them, I am sitting on my couch in the morning wearing any number of different crazy robes, and each day has a different crazy mug, coffee mug. And I just share something either that I'm reading in my devotional time in the morning, or something that I felt like God gave me that I wanted to share with others. And I've been so gratified, so grateful that that people have been enjoying them and have been encouraged by them. They're just meant to encourage people in the day, you know. to set the course for the day, as one, that seeks to be the kind of person that you really want to be and that God wants you to be. I don't try to, browbeat people into reading the Bible or going to church or cutting their hair or or wearing certain kind of clothes or anything like that. They're all just meant to be encouraging words, that are uplifting and helpful.
And you also, I put the link to the TikTok in the chat. You also have a fan club.
Yes, Rissenbull Rangers. The Rissenbull Rangers. Rissenbull is the little town that my character came from in Full Metal Alchemist. I also have 5 or 6 audiobooks. I started doing audiobooks during COVID because, all the studios and everything kind of shut down. And so I started doing audiobooks, and I found that I really love doing them. And I've got 5 or 6, I think, on Audible and Amazon now. I have a music book. I've got 6 original music CDs of my work on iTunes, and also have a sheet music book, a 100-page sheet music book of 16 of my more popular songs that I've written and produced over the years. I'm getting ready to release a new record. It's been the first one since 2009. I can't even believe it's been that long since the last record I released. I can't crank them out as fast as as other people can, but I've got tons of songs that I've written and produced over the years and just never released. So I'm going to put them all together and release something new. Just last week, I voiced a main character in a video game. Spent 2 days recording on a video game, and as soon as that is out, I'll be announcing that and letting people know about that and where to find it. I've got a lot of event appearances lined up coming up very soon, all throughout June, July, August, September. And, you said something about connecting with people. I want to say this before our time is out, Heath.
Mm-hmm.
I love people. I love people. I believe that every person is a precious creation of God and worthy of love and affirmation and encouragement. And I think in our day and age, a lot of people think that there's something wrong with somebody who just likes people. They're like, oh, he must be some kind of a pervert, or what, that he's a weirdo. Why? Because I like people, because if I were to meet you in person, Heath, I would probably give you a hug. I'd probably be like, hey man, what a great pleasure to meet you. It doesn't mean that I'm a weirdo or a pervert. That's just the way I express kindness and friendship and welcoming, a lot of people are judgmental of that and don't get that, probably because they themselves are not that kind of a person. And so they don't understand that kind of a person who is like that. They don't understand the kind of person that just loves to be around people and to talk to people and encourage them and look them right in the eyes and share something with them and interact with them. I have always loved that. I've been performing since I was very, very young, and I really love, we're going to go full circle here. I really love telling stories and sharing thoughts and perspectives and ideas that inspire and encourage and uplift and grow. I've had a lot of those stories shared with me, and they uplifted me and they grew me and they expanded me in many ways. And I have always wanted to be able to do the same for others.
Well, that's amazing. That's amazing that you get everything that you have going for you, and yet you touch so many lives, and that seemed to be such a positive influence on so many people. That's amazing, Vic. That's amazing.
Sure try.
I was saying that everyone who is here, if you are new here to Table Talk, thank you so much for coming in. I would love to have you. We talk we talk weekly, Tuesday nights live, and then some Thursday nights as well. We're here live, although actually we're taking a little bit of a break because I meant to say this earlier, but with the technical problems, I got all flustered in the very beginning. This up here, if you look at the name or the title of this episode, it is Table Talk 99 because we were going to do this Table Talk last week, but we rescheduled to this week. So last Thursday was going to be episode 99. Yet last Tuesday was episode 100. I scheduled a whole bunch of guests for episode 100. So I told everybody, okay, I'm not moving episode 100 because I've already scheduled everybody who was coming in. We had a rolling panel. It was a fantastic episode 100. You'll have to join us.
That's a big landmark, bro. That's a big landmark. Again, something to be proud of.
So we said that was episode 100 with time travel. So I kept you labeled as episode 99 because we were supposed, but actually, Vic, technically, chronologically, this is the 100th episode of Table Talk. So you actually got episode 100.
Okay, well, only you and me and the people in the chat will know that this is technically the 100th episode.
This is technically the 100th episode. So we're going to take because of 100, we're going to take about a 3-week break, and then we're coming back and we'll be talking about two of the regulars, Doug Burton, who wrote The Heroine's Labyrinth, which is an alternative story structure to the hero's journey, which occurs in stories with female heroes. We're going to be doing a Q&A about his book at the 1st of June, and then Brianna De Silva, who was my co-writer on The Cultists and the director. She wrote a book called The City of Reckoning, which is a fantasy novel, and we're going to be looking at that after that. So we're taking about a 3-week break, and then we're going to be back live at the start of June. So please do be here. And I'll say, hey, also, I'm a creator as well. So The Cultists, I've relaunched my web show. Brianna and I have done a lot of work on that. My web show, if you like web shows, and I know you do because Star Trek continues, we were just talking about that. So my web show is on YouTube now, the entire first season, The Cultists. This is a mockumentary web series about modern day Lovecraftian cultists who are just trying to worship Cthulhu in a world full of people who don't understand. The season 1 is 10 episodes long. They're all like 6 to 8 minutes long. So Cthulhu Orgy, Eaten Alive by Evil Doms. Yeah, the bloopers are up. I got prop making videos over here as well. Cult of the Fish People.
Now you're talking my language there.
Hey, we should maybe one day you could watch something live with one of these. How to Summon Cthulhu, the Yellow King. So this is up. We're making an RPG for this this web show, and so Brianna and I have been working on this. So we're associating games with this web show. So the first season is up. It was a complete relaunch, rebrand of the channel. We adjusted audio on the episodes and stuff like that. So in fact, I should drop the link in the chat. And so if you're here, check that out. Check that out too. The Cultists right here. Oh, we have a super chat. The Cultists right here. That's on YouTube. So please, I would love to have, if you're new here, would love to have you on this channel for the live streams. And also please check this out. Yes. Robert for $1.99 says episode 99 got caught in the transporter beam. Yes, that's exactly what happened. And so it got transported from last week to this week.
Yes, there's a whole new episode. There's a whole new episode coming based on that.
Thank you so much for being here, Vic.
This
has been an amazing conversation.
My pleasure. I enjoyed chatting with you. I hope we can set something up again. And thank you, all of you that are watching and listening and interacting in the chat. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you to everyone in the chat. And thank you to everyone who's been watching on replay and will be in the comments because I'll be reading the comments as well. So, all right. Later, everybody. I look forward to seeing you again on Table Talk. Everybody go forth, be creative, be constructive, and be productive. Yes. Live long and prosper.